Today's episode is brought to you by Manugian Law. Facing a Tarek Skubal fastball is scary. You know what else is scary? Walking into a courtroom without someone who has your best interests at heart. And that is where Max Manugian comes in. Confidence in the courtroom is his slogan. And it's easy to see why. With over 11 years of criminal defense experience, Manugian Law is your go-to in Oakland, Wayne, and Macomb counties, as well as all of Southeast Michigan. The man knows his way around a courtroom. Easy to contact and a straight shooter, Max Manugian is in the business of helping his clients, not nickel and diming those in need. Step into the batter's box with confidence with Manugian Law. Friend of the podcast, a diehard Tigers fan, and proud sponsor of Turning the Corner. Contact Manugian Law at 248-973-7527. And welcome in to another episode of Turning the Corner, a playoff-bound Detroit Tigers podcast. I'm Kieran Steckley. With me, as always, is a man who knows how to get out of a sticky situation. He is Cody Stavenhagen. How you doing?
Doing good, Kieran. I'm definitely exhausted, but it's the good kind of exhausted, not the September sucks, ready for the season to be over, exhausted. It's the wow, this is really fun. There's a ton going on. I'm trying to finish 8 stories at once and do a podcast and getting on a flight first thing in the morning because the Detroit Tigers are going to the playoffs.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you. Friday night, your boy had some options on some things to do, but I wasn't doing a damn thing. But watching that game and hopefully at the time, witnessing history, because as you've pointed out, as others have pointed out, an historical achievement for this team to reach the postseason. We don't have to regurgitate the numbers, but I think it's also just worth mentioning again just how nuts this whole thing has become. You look at the lineup up and down. You look at where the you see some of the lowlights from the season. You're just like, this team made the playoffs. It made the playoffs, and by the way, a team that nobody wants to play. We'll get to that here in a second, but a much overdue, a much anticipated Friday night in downtown Detroit, Comerica Park. I think anybody who is a fan of the team, involved with the team, covers the team, has kind of wanted to see that environment. I know that it was your first time, Cody. So I'm curious, your observations from Friday, and then we'll, just like the environment, and then we'll kind of get into the fun stuff of the sticky situation, if you would, after the game.
Yeah, when the Tigers clinch and, I got down on the field, I was unexpectedly hit by a lot of emotion. I wasn't expecting that. I'm a journalist. I'm not a fan. I don't necessarily have a rooting stake in things. But when I got down there and you just kind of experience the crowd and the environment, uh, I remember when I was covering some of those celebrations last postseason with the Rangers, thinking man, it'd be cool to see the guys I actually know and have built relationships with, experiencing this. And you get down there and I just kind of got chilled, and it kind of takes you back to 6 long seasons, a lot of prime years of my life spent up in that press box watching some really bad baseball. Definitely some nights where you're like, man, is this worth it? What are you doing? How long until they're ever going to be good? I don't want to say I never thought I would experience it, 'cause I guess it was well, if I do this job long enough, they'll eventually be good, right? But definitely points even this year where I didn't think it was going to happen anytime soon, and then just be like, wow, this is really happening. This is the kind of stuff you grow up wanting to do a job like this for, to feel it, to see the city and the fans that excited, to see young players like Riley Green just kind of in awe, to see, AJ clearly trying to stay composed. I think there was a lot of emotion for him, and to see Scott Harris just smile. it was cooler than I expected and more emotional for me than I even expected. I had to be like, wait, why am I tearing up? Like, stop, time to be a reporter. Like, quit that emotion BS. But it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was amazing to be a part of.
It's funny you say that because like even though like you and I are in different positions in this case, I also like felt myself unexpectedly emotionally moved. Like obviously I'm emotionally invested, but I was just like by myself watching the game and then you see the multiple generations of fans in the stands, and then you start thinking, all right, well, I'm 31. Like I remember '06, but I was pretty young then. I remember I remember 12. I remember heartbroken 13 when we were in college, and like but that's like a lifetime ago in a way, you know what I mean? And so and this has been pointed out, but there are people that haven't even seen, they don't remember diddly squat about that time. They were too young, maybe they weren't into baseball, like all these things. It's been that kind of time has passed, and then you see like the emotions on the players' faces, and then for me, I start thinking about like I remember when school ball was just like getting rocked as a rookie in 2020, and I remember like Riley Green. I remember where I was when Riley Green fouled that ball off his foot to delay his rookie season. You know what I mean? And I start kind of going through that, and that's when it kind of hit me. And then I called my dad, and we talked about it in the first. He's like, yeah, it's just like '06, this young team that unexpectedly gets there. We'll see. Hopefully, uh, and so that kind of got me like because I was just me and my thoughts. I couldn't talk to anybody other than like I say the phone call. So it was just me and my thoughts watching that, and I did kind of get emotionally moved more than I thought. It was beyond celebration. It was just like the human element was just like at play, in full swing, and then the AJ piece of this, which we'll get to in a second. You see that I don't think I've seen him smile like that since Miguel Cabrera fielded a ground ball at first base, and it was just a special thing. Like all these things just kind of hit you in the face unexpectedly, like you said, and uh, and and I think also part of the emotions was me also trying to keep in mind, just like like I said earlier, how historic this was, like how unique this was, trying to really engage myself in this moment because you're not going to see anything like this again. Like this rise, and I mean just a couple of weeks ago we're having phone conversations like, yeah, I mean it's nice. They're probably not gonna make the playoffs because the Twins would have to like really collapse, and they Tigers would have to have this record. It's like, yeah, I know. And then the Twins collapsed, and then the Tigers had this record, and also like the exuberance of knocking that out on Friday as opposed to like the Saturday. I mean, can you imagine the anxiety if they had lost on Friday and then Saturday with the rain delay? Like okay, it's kind of our last chance to avoid having to burn school ball. Yeah, like got it out of the way. It was a beautiful day, beautiful night. Just an awesome experience. And I'll tell you, like you mentioned Scott Harris, we had him on the pod obviously last week and or this week, but if you listened to us on Monday a week ago, and like he's a pretty composed person. He's a pretty straight laced guy. We joked like, will he be in the celebration? Hey, he earned it. He was in the celebration. That was fun to see. Chris Illich getting beer shower. I mean, who doesn't want to beer shower their bus? Okay, like
Right.
so
Hold on. I talked about like setting odds for this stuff last week. All right.
that's true.
Riley Green being the party animal was, would have been terrible gambling odds because that was just a shoe in, and he lived up to that. He covered the spread there. Um, Scott Harris not only took part but was an active
He
participant,
had
pouring.
goggles.
He had goggles. He was pouring beer down Riley Green's throat. It's like, yeah, this might not be good for his health, Scott. I mean, come on now. He was living it up. So good for Scott. He didn't dance, I don't think, like I saw
mm.
Chris Young dance, but he exceeded my expectations for how lively he would be. And then the ultimate long shot. I mean, you would have made a lot of money. This is one of those things you just put like $2 on to win like 100, and you're like, why not? Chris Illich not only making an appearance but getting doused with beer, uh, pumping his arms up and
Hmm.
down, like fully partaking. Never would have guessed that in a million years.
Fully good sport too, because it wasn't no mystery what Riley was escorting him to. You know what I mean? And I'll say this, like, for whatever people feel about those two people, that's not what we're trying to get at. But you have to be pretty comfortable in your own skin and not take yourself too seriously to engage like that. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, so credit to them for being part of it. I really did like AJ's speech there at the beginning. Where he's like, we had a meet. So there's your meeting. So everyone said there was no meeting. AJ spilled the beans. There was a meeting
There was
mid-season
something. There was
that
something, yeah.
said, "What kind of team do you want to be?" And I guess you wanted to be a playoff team. That was pretty good. That was owning the moment. AJ owned the moment on that one, and yeah. So I was jealous of them because I was like, I've never gotten that many free beers in my life. I would, that's reserved for a special few, and they did earn it. AJ, you wrote about him this week, and at the time, obviously, we had no idea what's going to happen. Now we know what the playoff matchup is, but AJ specifically, with the White Sox piece of this and the long road that he's been on, this feels like redemption to me. This feels like a redemption story for AJ. Like, if you held what happened in Houston against him and you didn't want him banned for life, you would say, all right, you're going to go to Siberia baseball, which at that time was the Tigers, and you're going to have to earn your way back. Maybe there's a Dark Knight Rises metaphor in there somewhere. You're going to have to earn your way back. We're not going to stop you, but you're going to have to earn your way out of the hole and back home where you feel like you belong, which for him is October, managing baseball games. And I don't see a whole lot of pushback on him. I feel like he has redeemed himself. I feel like he's in the good graces of baseball people, and for that, I'm also like, I feel good for him. You know what I mean? Because I do think he's earned it. Uh, do you
You
agree? Do
should
you?
check some of you should check some of my mentions once like Dodgers fans and oddly Phillies fans who weren't that involved in the whole thing got a hold of that story because it was a
Okay.
reminder there are a lot of people out there who will never forgive anyone who was within a 10-mile radius of the Astros cheating scandal. So it was a reminder, and we're about to hear a lot more of all that here in the
Mm-hmm.
coming days. Um, but as someone who has covered AJ for 4 seasons now and got to know him fairly well, like certainly an amazing thing to witness, just to like, when he was out standing kind of by himself, it was just his wife and his daughter kind of removed from everything else, and he's out there gazing, looking at the stands, just like, wow, like what a moment that is for him. And I don't know exactly what's going on in his head, but I'm sure whatever it is pretty special. I don't think it's redemption all in one instant. I don't think it's not redemption if they would have missed the postseason by one game, but full redemption if they make it. But it was like a step toward kind of just like redeeming the arc of his career. Like I wrote, if he had never been fired in Houston, a lot of things would be different, but chances are he would be on track to being a Hall of Fame manager. And instead, he went to baseball Siberia for 3.5 seasons and was not any good and was very much removed from the national spotlight and did some really good things. You could tell he made an impact, but there were a lot of hard nights, for AJ, someone who's not hasn't done a lot of losing in his life, honestly. Something to think about. And so just to kind of see it, like it was a little bit of a full circle moment, a little bit. I think part of AJ felt like going to Detroit, not leaving the Tigers, signing an extension was like, if he could do it the hard way, maybe it could be a little more meaningful. Maybe the people who dislike him would kind of be forced to respect that a little bit more. That's the sense I've always gotten. And so this is definitely a step toward that. The full step is probably winning a lot more games, doing it multiple years, winning a World Series. But this is certainly, I think, the first big step toward um, redemption and more the national spotlight.
Like sometimes I always try to remind myself of this because for all the major professional sports, and I guess to a certain extent college, but kind of not really. There's only so many of these jobs, managers, head coaches. Like there's only so many, and you only get 4 to 5 that open up a year, if that. Maybe sometimes a little bit more. It varies. Uh, it's hard to get. And it's one of those things that sometimes you think like, well, why did that guy take that job? Well, it's because if you get offered a job like this, you more or less have to take it, and then you just have confidence in yourself to figure it out. And I don't know if AJ would ever explain it that way, but I would wager that had to be part of the thought process that AJ was like, all right, I'm getting interviews. Okay, if I'm getting offered a job and it's the only one I got, then I'm going to take it because I want to manage, and I don't know if this window will pass me by, so soon. So like that. I always look at it that way. And to his credit, like he built a team in his mold, uh, which has to also give him some added level of satisfaction. So like that's just my way of saying like it's not like he was gung ho about coming to Detroit, nor like really should he have been, given where he was. But he made the most of it, and it's kind of a bet on yourself type deal with the circumstances of that we talked about earlier with like the White Sox and all that stuff. So yeah, let's move go back and move forward at the same time. So the Tigers are in Houston, the team that AJ Hinch used to manage, and was, I guess, unceremoniously fired. Which, by the way, reminder, he didn't have to be fired. That wasn't a stipulation. The Red Sox kept core after the suspension, so just keep that in mind. I am actually happy, Cody. I'm pretty sure I'm in the minority. In fact, I know I am. I am happy that the Tigers are playing Houston. Part of it's selfish. Part of it is just kind of how I look at things. The selfish part is I'm going to go. I'm going to go to these games, and now I don't have to get on a plane. I can just drive to Houston. So that's the selfish part. The unselfish part, the narrative part of my brain, is this AJ return thing is just too juicy. It's too juicy for it not to be the thing. Similar to Stafford coming to Detroit to finally play a playoff game in Detroit against the Lions, and Goff to go up against his team. Like that's too good. That the script is too good to avoid that. And then I'll just kind of go through my other thoughts real quick, and then you can kind of take it in whatever position you want. A little less familiar. They only played 6 times. Now the Tigers were 2-4 in those 6 games, but they last played in mid-June. Yeah, I'm not even going to go through like the lineups, but just in general, this is a different Tigers team than the Astros have faced. So like there was an element of me that was like, man, you're playing Baltimore an awful lot, and that's a good team. It's a talented team. It's a smart team. They really going to let you essentially win 3 straight series? Like just law of averages, that just kind of seems unlikely. You know what I mean? And so, that was kind of my hesitation about Baltimore, even though they are a young team. But the flip side of, the Astros being this experienced team that's, gone all these playoff runs is that, they got a lot of mileage on them. And that can be a thing as well. And they have a rookie manager. So you got AJ Hinch. Maybe he has revenge on the mind, maybe he doesn't. But you have AJ Hinch going up against.
Maybe you guys have revenge on the mind. Let's be real.
No, I was playing it safe. You have AJ Hinch, mastermind of situational baseball, going up against a first-time manager
who happens to be an AJ Hinch disciple.
Yes. So like and that's another thing. The teacher and the student thing that plays as well. That there's gonna be content about that. And Alvarez, we don't know if he's even healthy. So that's your best bet, and he's gonna take BP. They're gonna try. They keep things pretty tight-lipped. That's fine. but there's not really a lot of indications that he's going to go out there full go physically. So for those reasons, I was kind of like, I kind of like the idea of Houston. Like it felt too good of a story, and it felt more fresh than going up against Baltimore again and just trying to do this dance that we've seen a handful of times where you got out of there probably more fortunate than you would be if you did it a third time, just like third time through the lineup. This would have been Baltimore's third time through the lineup in a way against the Tigers, and that's just a lot in a short period of time. So those are my thoughts. I don't know, you can kind of take it in whatever direction you
Yeah.
want.
I don't think there's a huge difference in the two matchups. There's pros and cons either way. I think the Baltimore matchup would have been a little bit better for the Tigers. They're 4-2 against them just this past month. I do think, though, that seeing a lot of these pitchers, seeing Bo Brisky what feels like a million times, that ultimately is only going to tilt more and more in Baltimore's favor. So that's a factor to consider. But what does scare me a lot, one of the Tigers' weak points, even through their red hot stretch, has been hitting left handed pitching. Their right handed batters have just not performed all that well as of late. And you are most likely going to face two left handed starters in Framber Valdez and UC Kikuchi. A ballpark where left field, the Crawford boxes you can take advantage of, but you're going to have a lot of left-handed hitters in your lineup. You're going to have righties who haven't been faring that well. Like, how much are you going to be able to take advantage of that ballpark's most hitter-friendly feature? I'm trying to find the numbers here. The Tigers, as of Sunday, they had a 648 OPS against left-handed pitching since August 13th, and against right-handed pitching 749. So you're almost 100 points worse. Who's arguably your best hitter, Kerry Carpenter? Sounds like he's probably not starting in two of these games. That worries me. Andy Ibanez is going to be huge, and he has been brutal since July 21st. He's hitting below 200. It's one of the reasons we saw him lead off, get a lot of at bats the last 3 or 4 days. They just want to get him going because they know how important he is. But the flip side of this, the Astros do not have a deep left-handed bullpen. They have Josh Hader, they have Caleb Ferguson. Those are the only two lefty relievers active for them right now. They maybe could activate one more if they chose for their postseason roster. So that does help the Tigers a little bit. Although you might be in trouble for the first 5, 6 innings of two of these games, maybe the advantage can tilt back in your favor in the late innings. So again, a little bit of pros and cons there, but facing Fromber, facing UC Kikuchi, if I were the Tigers, I would have rather seen the Orioles.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mention the Corbin Burns part of it. Like that's
Yeah, and you don't want to see him either, to be fair.
So I mean, yeah, like you said, you could talk yourself in the either direction. I was just surprised that everyone was that focused on Baltimore, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And
and I do think the bullpen thing should be noted. I think there's going to be a lot of talk about, like, oh, are the Tigers doomed against these lefty starters? And that's a legit worry. But the Tigers have faced much deeper lefty bullpens, and in the playoffs, they tend to be. Sometimes it comes down to your bullpen, and then the Alvarez thing is huge too. Like, the Astros have a very top-heavy order, so you can target Altuve, Bregman, Tucker with your best arm, Tyler Holton, whoever it may be, in a crucial situation. Alvarez is one of like 5 hitters in the league that you just there's no such thing as an advantage against. Like, his splits are great from both sided pitchers. He's such a brutal matchup. The fact that he's probably not fully healthy if he plays at all could be a pretty big factor, and I think you feel better when you get into the bottom half of that order that's really struggled this year. Might be a better matchup for some of your young arms and your Sean Gunther and Brennan Hanafis of the world if they can keep doing what they've been doing, throw strikes, get some ground balls, bring in Holton to knock out the top of the lineup. Like, maybe you got yourself a pretty good chance there.
so on our Turning the Corner podcast, X, formerly known as Twitter poll, 67%, so full 2/3 preferred Baltimore. So, I mean, it was. I mean, I was watching both games intently, going back and forth. Tigers were ahead, like time wise, and then and then the Royals caught up, Royals Braves, and then they more or less ended at the same time.
Yeah,
I think the Royals won right at the video review on the
sounds
McKinstry
right.
hit.
Hmm.
So you go from you go from all right, well, if this holds up, which is looking like it will, Tigers are playing Houston to AJ Hinch getting ejected. So
Shout
uh,
out AJ, one of a turning the corner tradition, poking a little fun at AJ after we say nice things about him. How about getting tossed for the only time all year in the ninth inning of Game 162? That's just beautiful. I love it.
and it was and because this is the rule, it was like a short, very short
Yes, it's an
ejection,
automatic ejection.
automatic
Yeah.
ejection. Because it's like hand up, and then AJ basically just says one more word. And it's just like, yeah, you're out of here.
I think he
And
did it. I think he knew. I think
he
he's
knew,
like,
he
I
knew.
can't, I can't have a zero next to my ejections for this whole year. Like, when I'm looked back on in history, be like, no, like, this guy wasn't afraid to argue a little bit. Look, he got tossed in every
Yeah.
season of his career, or whatever.
My
Hilarious.
my favorite AJ, the part of his like any ejection is his hands up. So it's like a like, all right, I understand. Hold on. And then it's like a decoy because then he like attacks with like some what I assume is like some very ironclad logic and talking points, but it's like, all right, I understand, but you missed blah 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 blah,
Yeah, but did
like
you take this physics class that I took? Like,
he doesn't mince words. Every word is impactful when he's talking to umpires. So I appreciate it. We should have mentioned that up at the top. All right, well let's keep
the more
with
I've
the
thought
left.
about that manager of the year vote, man, I'm stressing over it. I'm sending it in right after this. Not going to reveal my vote, but it is a hard vote, obviously, for the one award. There's no like real like stats you can base it on.
Yeah, I
Tough.
mean, the only thing I'll say is that like if manager of the year is defined by the manager that did the best job, there's a couple ways to do it. One is who won the most games. Another one is who overachieved, and part of that could be who did something like truly a true example of what a manager, what an impact a manager can have on a team. Uh, Obviously, AJ didn't have the most wins. It feels like to me he checks those other two boxes, but you already know this. I'm not trying to persuade you. You got to do what you got to do with your Big J journalism vote there. In regards to the lefty thing, though, I can guarantee you, like it's they scrapped together a couple hits in game one, and you got Carpenter sitting there off the bench, and I'm gonna think to myself, at what point do you just try? You know, because
I say you start him. Start him. Couldn't you just see AJ doing that? Just
I mean that'd be great. I
no.
think because part of it is like
I
do
don't
what
think they
got you
will.
here.
I don't think they'll actually do this. But like, no,
Part
it'd
of
be
it is
interesting.
do what got you here, and I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
But part of it also is like, is it doing you any good to put your less your lesser hitters in the lineup in a very short like because now we're going off at minimum 2 games, maximum 3 games of time to get runs across. That's the name of the game: getting runs, preventing runs. So to me, like I just wouldn't waste at bats not having Kerry Carpenter in there. Like I
Yeah, it's
understand not
tough. I
starting
mean, yeah,
him,
the
but
reality
like
is,
at a certain
yeah,
point,
he's
like
yeah. That I joke, but I wouldn't start him. He's whatever he is, 3 for 28 against lefties. Like he just
but then you're gonna throw out Andy Ibanez, who like he has a
and you
track
do
record,
it with the
but
hope that Andy can run into one. That's what the whole. And then I guess what's your game one lineup? All right, Jake, Torque, Colt, Trey Sweeney. I'm not. He's actually I think done okay against lefties, but I'm not confident right there. But you
mm,
don't have a right-handed shortstop now. Third you could do a variety of things, but I guess it's probably Andy or Vierling, right? And then Riley's playing. I assume Parker's playing. He's gonna have to bat toward the bottom of the order most likely. And so then maybe Veerling in right or Winsel, Jahan, like those are kind of your decision points. Um, just a reminder how much better you feel about the whole thing when Kerry Carpenter's in all
Yeah.
that lineup.
Well, in regards to like the roster in general, do you have any insight, projections of like, because you gotta remind people sometimes because it's been a while since we've had to talk about this, but the 28 man goes to 26. So
Yeah.
we're gonna have some decisions are in the process of being made here. So you have any leans, any insight or
A little bit, not a lot, and I'm going to say all this with the disclaimer that AJ and Scott often have some sort of surprise up their sleeve, or they are able to be smarter than I am and consider something I haven't. But it sure seemed like any Kenta Maeda debate was put to rest when they started him and had him throw a ton of pitches Sunday. That seemed like, all right, Kenta, you will eat some innings for us, and then we'll see you again in Lakeland. I mean,
yeah.
he's going to be like on the trip and everything, I'm sure, but metaphorically, we'll see you again in Lakeland, and we're going to hope you figured some things out. I would expect no Kenta Maeda. And then the question is, how many pitchers do you carry? You can carry up to 13, but you could carry 12. You could carry 11. AJ Hinch did that in an Astros playoff series once they win 11. I think a 3-game wild card series, I think the Tigers are probably going to lean 12 pitchers. I mean, there's an argument with as many arms as they use to go 13, but chances are if you go 13, you're carrying a guy you don't really want to use anyway, whether that's Ty Madden, maybe Casey Mize, some you're not probably going to need 13 in a short series where you are going to have an off day before the series, an off day after the series. I think you can get by with it. Jackson Job's a little bit of a question mark, but I think he's going to be on here. I think you're looking at no Maeda, and then you're looking at choosing one of Casey Mize and Ty Madden. Right now, I would probably think no Ty Madden. AJ did want Mize to pitch Sunday, like inter mid inning. Same thing with Kiter Montero, so that they would have experienced that. That seems also like maybe a little tip that they're on there. So there's that. And then the position player side does get pretty interesting. I don't think there are as many decisions there, but if you're going to take 14 position players, are you just rolling with the guys you have right now, or could there be any sort of surprise? I think Jahan and Jace Young are the most vulnerable on the back end of this roster. Given what we talked about with the lefty arms, I think you maybe take Jahan. Then with the lefty bullpen, some things to consider. I think the only guy who really has a compelling argument to come up would be Akil Baddoo. Would you want him for a late game pinch run scenario? Maybe you carry him over Jace, kind of with the thought that, like, realistically, we don't want Jace playing much, if at all, in this series anyway. And it's an interesting debate. I tend to lean toward just take Jace. You could still want his bat in a late game scenario. He got in a game at second. Like, I don't think that was accidental. He can make sure he can still play multiple positions for you. The argument for keeping Akil is like, well, what if we need 90 feet in the ninth inning to win a must win game? And that's not a bad argument. Like, the counter argument would be like, well, you've been playing must win games for a month and you ain't have Akil Baddoo on the roster. So why are we changing this now? And then, as much as you got to play to win, like, is there some intrinsic value in Chase Young experiencing the playoffs so that next year you can say, well, that guy's been there and he's done it? So I think those are probably kind of the factors they have to debate. I wouldn't blame him if they kept Akil, but I think then you're kind of manipulating your whole roster for one very specific scenario that may or may not happen. And there's maybe a wider range of situations where Jace could factor into a game.
Yeah, I mean, as much as like having a keel in your back pocket like feels like a real asset for that, I tend to agree that it's also a situation where you have to get to. And how do you get to that? It's just in general preventing the scoring runs, right? Whereas you don't necessarily anticipate him helping you in those areas. You know what I mean? So, like, I think it'd be awesome. And honestly, I could see him even if he, hitting in a pinch, you get it. I could see that happening too if he were added. But just like, all right, here's maybe some spark plug against a righty here. But I
My
just,
my,
I
my
think it'd be
AJ
too much.
Stott sleeper is like, is there like a 5% chance that Ryan Vilade starts game one in right field? Like,
I mean, there's history tells you that it's not that it is on the board.
that would be a sleeper. What if they're just like, no, we want another righty instead of Jace, and yeah, we have Ryan Vilade on the roster, and you know what, we're starting him. Like, I don't think it's completely impossible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, some things to think about.
Man, what a wild weekend and a short turnaround. As we're recording, we just got the notice that the games will be. I just lost it. The games will be at like what 1:30
Two,
local
two,
time.
1:30 local, 2:30 Eastern, all three games. What do we? I was hoping they would get like a primetime game in there, or at least not be the early game. I think that sucks.
I,
All 3 days. I think that's
game
KC Baltimore. More people watching that. Okay, the Mets are primetime. I get that. Okay, I think they could have at least gotten a 4 p.m. game in there.
You have the presumptive Cy Young. You have the fired manager from the scandal returning to the team that that happened with. You have a perennial October team also in the Astros. Like people feel a certain way about the Astros as we've talked about. I feel like that was kind of made for prime time. I'm a little surprised.
Yeah,
Freaking New York. Uh,
it's better. At least there's no 8:30 game. That would have been too late, I think.
well,
But I
also,
don't know. I'd rather have that in a freaking day game. Day games in the playoffs. Come on,
yeah.
that sucks.
And then also of note, another reason I was kind of like, yeah, about Baltimore is that there's a weather element at play
Yeah,
as well. So that that could be screwy and several different factors. Not gonna be a thing over in Houston,
it's gonna
obviously.
make
So
packing a lot easier. Well, I don't know if it'll make packing for me easier or not. I got to prepare for a lot of different scenarios, but at least I can like feel good about what I need to have for the first 3 days.
that is true. That is true, and that's really the most important thing. Uh, all right. Anything else, Cody? That you wanted to touch on before we get out of here.
I feel like I'm probably forgetting something because there's been so much content and so many storylines over the past few days, but my brain's not fully functioning, so that's all I got.
Well, I'll tell you, we'll be having content throughout the wild card series. Like I said, I'll be down there, so in some fashion, we will have podcasts after each game, and hopefully more. On the socials. So you gotta follow Cody at Cody Stavenhagen. I'm at Kieran_Steckley. Pod page at Turn Corner Pod. YouTube and Instagram and TikTok as well. Links to our merch store and our Venmo tip jar. So hopefully more. But at a minimum, we'll have some recap stuff, some more or less instant reaction type stuff with the wild card. We weren't gonna not gonna end the podcast when the playoffs start. Come on now. This is what we did it for. This is us turning the corner ourselves. So very exciting, and I'm looking forward to it. Seeing Skubal on the mound in a playoff game, that's just gonna be so sweet. It's gonna be so sweet. So I want to thank everybody for listening, subscribing, following, engaging. It means a lot. It's the only reason we're able to do this. So thank you again for the regular season. Now let's get to the playoffs. So for Cody Stavenhagen, I'm Kieran Steckley. Everybody have a great Monday, because we'll talk to you Tuesday.